If you go back to the last few years where Russian intelligence officers have been systematically expelled from various Western and particularly European countries, they've regrouped in certain parts of Europe. There are three or four capital cities in Europe where I understand that they are still active and where they have reinforced as a result. One of those is Belgrade. So I think Serbia does pose a particular problem in this context. And I hope Keir Starmer listens to that point. I think with the others, it's more debatable. I think you could certainly, I think, operate in Bosnia-Herzegovina and even conceivably Kosovo in this way, but I think Serbia should be ruled out.
A warning about something else. This is introducing migrant return hubs in Western Balkan countries. It could leave Britain vulnerable to Russian spies. Sir Keir Starmer is pushing ahead with the plans to send rejected asylum seekers to migration centres abroad. Serbia, Kosovo, North Macedonia and Bosnia are on a short list of about 9 countries drawn up by ministers so far. The advice warns that moving forward with the return hubs could mean creating sensitive national infrastructure and facilities in a Russian sphere of influence that could be infiltrated and targeted by Russian agents. Well, Christopher Steele is the former head of the Russia desk at MI6. He's with us now. Good morning.
Good morning there.
Do you agree with the assessment of your former colleagues?
I think it's important to understand the degree to which Russia is influential in the Western Balkans. However, I would put a slight caveat on it. I think it depends on which country you're talking about. If you go back into the past, you'll see that Serbia in particular has been used as an operating base in the region by Russian intelligence services, particularly the GRU, the military intelligence service, which tried to organize a coup, in fact, in Montenegro, the neighboring country, some years back. And also, if you look back at the bot farms that the Russians set up to interfere in Western elections from 2016 onwards, Northern Macedonia certainly featured in that. But I think my concerns would centre around more Serbia than anywhere else, because I think that really is a place where Russian intelligence is active and has, in a sense, close political relations with Vucic and others in the government.
So tell us more about Serbia being a risk then. Why should we be so concerned and what can be done about it? Do you think Keir Starmer's actually going to listen to this advice?
I think if you go back to the last few years where Russian intelligence officers have been systematically expelled from various Western and particularly European countries, they've regrouped in certain parts of Europe. There are three or four capital cities in Europe where I understand that they are still active and where they have reinforced as a result. One of those is Belgrade. So I think Serbia does pose a particular problem in this context. And I hope Keir Starmer listens to that point. I think with the others, it's more debatable. I think you could certainly, I think, operate in Bosnia-Herzegovina and even conceivably Kosovo in this way. But I think Serbia should be ruled out.
How sophisticated is the Russian threat to us, not just through perhaps this potential infrastructure, but in general, Christopher? How do you assess that?
I think it's profound. And the point is that Russia is at war, considers itself at war with both Ukraine and the West. And within the Western group of countries, of allies, Britain is now viewed as the strongest ally of Ukraine. That's great in many ways, but in counterintelligence terms, it's bad news because it means that Britain is the number one target. And Russia's even gone as far in recent times, as we know, of operating in a kinetic fashion. So in other words, assassination, arson, cutting cables and things like that, communications cables. And I think all of that would be conceivable, could happen in a place like Serbia.
Very interesting. That point has really struck me. Thank you, Christopher. I just wonder, in regard to the international perspective in all of this with Donald Trump, where he is with Vladimir Putin, and I'd be very interested in your assessment on that. Where do we as a country fit into that? Not just here at home and with America, but of course in regard to this idea that has been mooted in regard to the Western Balkans as well.
I think we have been incredibly united as a country. It's one of the few issues that we have been in recent years, after all the divisions that came after Brexit, in support of Ukraine, which is vital. And I think we've got a real problem at the moment in keeping America on side in that sense. Trump seems to be in awe or in fear of Putin and out to make every excuse for Putin and not agreeing a ceasefire in Ukraine or any credible way forward for a peace plan. And it's very difficult, I think, for the Western governments, other Western governments, France, Germany, and so on, to keep the Americans on side. One heartening thing of late has been the new German Chancellor, Merz, has been extremely strong and powerful in his support of Ukraine and will be doing his best, as well as Starmer and others, to keep the Americans on side. But the Americans are difficult because they see their relationship with Russia as far beyond just Ukraine or the settlement of Ukraine into some kind of geopolitical reset, which I think is very concerning because there's no way that Putin has changed any of his objectives in regard to Ukraine or indeed the world at large.
Christopher, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts on that. Christopher Steele there, the former head of the Russian desk at MI6.
Blitz. Pomenuli ste dijalog sa Prištinom. Trenutni forma dijaloga ne funkcioniše. Da li planira?
Yes, I had the possibility to discuss the visit to Moscow already in Tirana with President Vučić, and I expressed my views, which are very clear. I really don't understand why it is necessary to stand side by side with the person who is conducting this horrible war in Ukraine. And President Vučić was explaining his side of the story. So, yes, we had a very extensive discussion about this.
Nešto da uradi po tom pitanju, da promeni format.
In our talks, we also addressed broader European security concerns. Serbia faces a strategic geostrategic choice where it wants to be. Serbia's European future depends on the values it chooses to uphold.